Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales. Tonight we travel far back into the origins of humankind, to a time before history itself began, the Stone Age. This was a world before metal, before writing, before cities. A world where fire was both a weapon and a comfort, and where stone held the key to survival. Families huddled in shelters of hide and bone, hunters shaped blades from flint and obsidian, and small communities laid the quiet foundations for culture and ideas. Yet even then, people reached beyond mere survival. They carved figures from ivory, strung beads from shells, and made melodies with flutes of bird bone. In those small acts, imagination began to take hold. The Stone Age gave us our first art, our first rituals, and our very first tools. This was our earliest glimpse of what it means to be human. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is rest. Get comfortable, let your shoulders soften, and allow the weight of the day to drift away as we begin our journey into the echoes of the Stone Age. Let's begin. The Stone Age was the longest era of human history. It covers a span of time so immense that almost everything we think of as history sits at its very end. From the first simple tools chipped from rock to the rise of farming, this era stretches across millions of years. Civilizations, empires, kings, and written chronicles are only tiny flickers compared to its length. The Stone Age is usually divided into three broad chapters: the Paleolithic, when people lived as hunters and gatherers; the Mesolithic, when groups adapted to a changing world after the Ice Age; and the Neolithic, when farming and the first permanent villages appeared. For generation after generation, for tens of thousands of lifetimes, humanity's entire world was stone, wood, fire, and bone. To step into the Stone Age is to realize how small our written past really is, and how deeply our beginnings are rooted in a time when even the simplest invention could change everything. Early humans crafted tools from more than just stone. The name Stone Age makes it sound as though people relied only on rock, but survival demanded far more creativity than that. People used bone to fashion awls and needles, antler to make sturdy picks, and wood to carve shafts for spears and digging sticks. Plant fibers became cord and rope, twisted and braided with care. Sinew from animals bound sharp blades to wooden handles, while resins and tars served as natural glue. Even bark, shells, and reeds were pressed into use. Together, these materials created a toolkit far richer than the name Stone Age suggests. A single spear might carry the effort of a dozen different skills, from shaping stone to fire hardening, carving, lashing, and glue making. Each invention built upon the others, showing that early humans were not simply surviving, but engineering. Their ingenuity laid the foundation for the technologies that followed, proving that resourcefulness, more than raw strength, was humanity's greatest tool. The first hand axes were astonishingly symmetrical. Among the oldest known tools are the Acheulean hand axes, which appear in the record nearly 2 million years ago. These stone tools are striking not only for their usefulness, but for their quiet beauty. Many are shaped into near-perfect teardrops or ovals, their edges flaked with such care that they seem almost deliberate works of art. The hand axes were multi-purpose, used for butchering meat, scraping hides, and cutting plants, but their symmetry hints at something deeper. Making one required foresight. The maker had to imagine the finished shape and then carefully strike away flake after flake to reveal it. Some hand axes were made so large or worked so finely that they may not have been practical tools at all, but symbols of skill, status, or identity. They show us that even in the deep past, people cared about form and design, not only function. The Acheulean hand axe stands as one of humanity's first great achievements, both useful and beautiful at once. Stone knapping required a deep knowledge of physics. To shape stone into sharp, reliable tools was never a matter of random blows. It demanded a real understanding of how stone fractures. Early toolmakers learned to strike at just the right angle, with just the right force, against a carefully prepared surface, in order to control the result. This process, called knapping, relied on the natural geometry of conchoidal fracture, the same physics that makes glass shatter in smooth, curving patterns. By mastering it, ancient people could peel off long, razor-sharp flakes. A skilled napper could draw dozens of blades from a single core of flint or obsidian. The knowledge was so specialized that archaeologists today can identify whole cultures simply by their tool-making style. To watch a stone napper at work, even now, is to see knowledge, rhythm, and focus at play. It is one of the earliest of all sciences, an understanding of matter, force, and precision that transformed plain rock into survival. The levallois technique produced predictable flakes. One of the most sophisticated stoneworking methods of the Stone Age was the levallois technique. Instead of striking a stone at random, the toolmaker first prepared a core with careful shaping, then struck it a single time to release a flake of a size and shape already decided in advance. This required foresight, planning, and precise control. The result was a flake far sharper, longer, and more uniform than simpler methods could produce. The technique was used by Neanderthals as well as by early modern humans, a sign of advanced thinking shared across kinds of people. Mastery of it transformed the toolkit, allowing more effective hunting and the processing of food. It also reflects a remarkable leap in abstract thought, the ability to imagine a desired outcome and then work backward to achieve it. To watch such a toolmaker at work would have been like seeing an artist or an engineer in motion, coaxing a finely crafted instrument from a rough lump of stone. Neanderthals invented composite tools. Neanderthals, so often pictured as clumsy or dumb, were in truth skilled engineers of survival. They created composite tools, weapons, and implements made by joining several materials into a single design. A sharp stone point was fitted carefully into a wooden shaft, secured with animal sinew and an adhesive brewed from natural resins. This innovation turned simple stone into deadly hunting gear, capable of piercing the thick hides of large Ice Age animals. Composite tools called for planning, experiment, and cooperation, since each part had to be crafted separately and then assembled. Archaeologists have found clear evidence of these constructions, including stone points still smeared with traces of ancient resin. Far from brutish, Neanderthals showed intelligence, adaptability, and real technical skill. Their inventions shaped their world and, in many ways, mirrored the strategies of the early modern humans who lived alongside them. The composite tool was a quiet revolution, a small masterpiece of ingenuity born in the depths of the Ice Age. Microliths became the building blocks of larger tools. As the Stone Age advanced, people began making microliths, tiny razor-sharp blades only a few centimeters long. On their own, they were too small for heavy work, but combined, they were revolutionary. Microliths could be set into wooden shafts with resin and sinew, creating arrows, spears, and cutting tools with replaceable edges. This modular approach meant a broken part could be swapped out easily, and a weapon could be shaped for many different uses. Microliths also allowed lighter, more efficient hunting gear, changing the way people pursued game across open country. The innovation reflects not only skill, but a kind of systems thinking, seeing how small pieces could form a greater whole. Composite tools built from microliths spread widely, appearing in cultures across Europe, Africa, and Asia. These tiny shards of stone carried enormous power, marking a step toward the complex technologies that would one day come to define human ingenuity. Stone blades could be longer than a human hand. Not every Stone Age blade was small. Some, made in the later Paleolithic, were astonishingly long, more than 20 centimeters, longer than a grown person's hand. Creating them required skillful preparation of large flint cores and precise control of every striking angle. These long blades could be used directly as knives or reshaped into a range of smaller tools, offering great efficiency. Their size also made them symbols of craftsmanship, quiet proof of the maker's expertise. To produce such a blade was to show mastery over both material and technique, pushing stone right to its limits. To hold one feels almost modern in its sharpness and elegance. gently challenging our assumptions about so-called primitive technology. These long blades remind us that the Stone Age was neither crude nor clumsy, but filled with artisans who could coax extraordinary precision and beauty from stone, shaping tools that rivaled steel long before metalworking had even begun. Obsidian blades can be sharper than modern steel. Among the most extraordinary tools of the Stone Age were blades of obsidian. This volcanic glass fractures at the molecular level, producing edges so fine they can rival or even surpass modern surgical steel. Some studies have shown obsidian blades cutting with an edge only a few molecules thick, far keener than any metal knife. For Stone Age people, obsidian was a prized resource, traded across vast distances. To hold an obsidian blade was to possess one of the finest tools in the world. These blades could slice hide, meat, and plant fiber with ease, transforming the everyday tasks of survival. Obsidian's sharpness also carried a certain symbolic weight, its glossy black surface gleaming like polished gemstone. Even today, a handful of surgeons still use obsidian scalpels for the most delicate work, quietly linking modern medicine to ancient skill. These blades prove that the genius of toolmaking reached remarkable heights long before the arrival of bronze or iron. Some stone tools were polished to a mirror-like shine. While many stone tools were flaked to a rough sharpness, others were ground and polished until they gleamed. Polished stone axes from the later Neolithic were smoothed through hours of patient grinding against abrasive surfaces. This labor produced tools that were not only stronger and sharper, but strikingly beautiful. Their surfaces caught the light, shining as though carved from crystal. Such tools were fully functional, used for felling trees and shaping wood. Yet many were also buried in graves or left as offerings, hinting at a symbolic importance far beyond daily use. The care poured into polishing them reveals that these objects were more than practical things. They were expressions of identity, prestige, and perhaps belief. To create one required patience and vision, turning rough stone into something sleek and radiant. These mirror-like axes remind us that even in the Stone Age, beauty and usefulness were woven together in the work of human hands. Ancient glues were made from tree resin and birch tar. One of the most surprising Stone Age inventions was glue. Long before any chemistry, people learned to harness sticky substances drawn from the natural world. Tree resins could be gently heated and softened, then used to fasten stone blades onto wooden shafts. Birch tar was more remarkable still. It required the controlled heating of bark in low oxygen conditions, a process not unlike modern distillation. This black, sticky substance could bond tools with surprising strength and lasting durability. Making birch tar was no accident. It demanded a real understanding of fire, materials, and timing. The ability to produce adhesive on demand shows a level of experiment and problem-solving that rivals far later invention. With glue, tools became sturdier, weapons more reliable, and the range of what people could build quietly expanded. Something as simple as a lump of dark pitch reveals the ingenuity of our ancestors, who looked at trees not only for shelter or fuel, but for the solution to a technical problem. Early hunters made spears from fire-hardened wood. Stone tools were powerful, but wood remained essential. Early hunters shaped long wooden shafts, sharpening the tips and then hardening them over fire. The process meant carefully charring the point and scraping it smooth, producing a tougher, sharper weapon. Spears like these have been found preserved in ancient bogs, some more than 400,000 years old. Their survival shows how important woodworking was, even without a single stone point. With such spears, hunters could bring down animals far larger than themselves, including wild horses and deer. The skill to choose the right wood, shape it evenly, and harden it just enough without burning through, all required precision. It was knowledge carried carefully from one generation to the next. These fire-hardened spears remind us that long before the bow, and long before metal, people already wielded carefully engineered weapons. They carried simple shafts of wood, sharpened in flame, and in them found the power to endure. Stone tips made weapons deadlier and more reliable. Fixing a sharpened stone tip to a wooden spear transformed hunting. Stone tips could pierce far deeper than fire-hardened wood, making a spear deadly against even the largest animals. They also added weight to the weapon, improving both accuracy and penetration. But the innovation was not only about function, it required careful craft. Hunters had to shape the stone into a balanced, symmetrical point, carve a shaft to fit it, and bind the pieces together with sinew and resin. The result was a true composite weapon, combining the strengths of stone, wood, and fiber. Some finds even show stone tips still stained with animal blood, frozen in time from ancient hunts. With such weapons, people could bring down mammoths, bison, and deer with far greater success, feeding larger groups and pushing into new environments. The stone-tipped spear was more than a tool. It was a genuine leap forward, quietly changing the balance between humans and the great animals they pursued. People invented fishing hooks from bone. Fishing became a vital part of Stone Age life, and one of its most ingenious inventions was the fish hook, carved from bone, antler, or shell. These hooks show remarkable craftsmanship, with carefully shaped barbs designed to catch and hold. Some are more than 20,000 years old, proof that fishing technology was well developed long before farming. With hooks, people could take fish from rivers, lakes, and seas, widening their diets and steadying their food supply. Hooks also reveal planning, for making them required skill, patience, and an understanding of how fish behave. Found alongside net weights and fragments of line, they hint at whole fishing systems rather than chance catches. Fishing transformed survival, opening new sources of nourishment that could support larger groups of people. The humble bone hook is a gentle reminder that small inventions can change the course of history, feeding both bodies and minds through the long march of human development. Sewing needles of bone are among the oldest tools. Among the most remarkable Stone Age inventions are sewing needles carved from bone. Some date back more than 30,000 years and are astonishingly delicate, with a tiny eye drilled through the tip. These needles transformed survival, allowing people to stitch hides together into fitted clothing. With them, humans could fashion coats, leggings, boots, and even gloves, gaining insulation far beyond what loose skins could ever offer. Sewing meant people could endure colder climates, push into harsher lands, and stay warm while traveling. The skill of making a needle also speaks of great dexterity, for carving bone into such a fine tool required patience and a steady hand. Many needles are so perfectly shaped that they rival modern ones. They remind us that innovation does not always arrive in grand leaps. Sometimes it is a small, humble tool, no bigger than a finger, that quietly opens up entire new worlds of possibility. Fire itself was a technology that had to be mastered. It is easy to forget that fire, so central to human life, was once a rare and precious thing. In the Stone Age, mastering fire was not simply a matter of striking sparks. It meant knowing how to find dry tinder, having the patience to nurture an ember, and holding the skill to keep a flame alive through rain and wind. Archaeologists have found hearths hundreds of thousands of years old, with layers of ash and burnt bone marking places where fire was carefully tended. Fire cooked food, making it safer and easier to digest. It hardened wood, lit the darkness, and kept predators at bay. But it also created community. People gathered around the flames to share stories, warmth, and safety. To control fire was to control energy itself. It was humanity's first great invention, a technology built not from stone or wood, but from the very heart of nature. Hearths served as the social center of every camp. A hearth was far more than a fire pit. In the Stone Age, it was the center of life. Families gathered around it to cook, to share food, to talk, and to work. Archaeological sites reveal circles of stone hearths ringed by tools, bones, and ornaments, a map of daily life arranged around the flame. Hearths gave steady heat for drying meat, curing hides, and warming shelters. They offered light for tool making and a measure of safety through the long night. But they also became places of memory. The ashes of old fires mingled with new ones, marking years of use in a single spot. Some hearths seemed to have been renewed almost ceremonially, with fresh layers of stone or a new arrangement. To sit by a Stone Age hearth was to belong to something larger, a community and its traditions, and the flow of knowledge passed from one generation to the next, carried in firelight. Stone Age people shaped whole landscapes with fire. Fire was not only for warmth and cooking, it was also used to reshape entire environments. Evidence shows that Stone Age groups practiced the controlled burning of grasslands and forests to drive animals, encourage new plant growth, and clear paths through the land. This practice created mosaics of habitat that drew in game and made gathering easier. Layers of charcoal in soils across whole continents reveal that people were altering their landscapes with flame tens of thousands of years ago. By burning vegetation with care and purpose, they increased the yield of berries, tubers, and grazing animals. Fire was humanity's first tool of ecosystem management. Long before farming was even imagined, it shows that people were not passive dwellers in their world, but active shapers of it. The flicker of a torch in the Stone Age was not only survival, it was the beginning of humanity's long role as a force that reshapes the earth. People cooked roots and grains long before farming, long before fields of wheat or barley. Stone Age people were already experimenting with the cooking of wild plants. Archaeologists have found the charred remains of roots, tubers, and grains in ancient hearths, some tens of thousands of years old. These discoveries show that people understood how to make otherwise tough or bitter foods edible. Cooking broke down fibers, released nutrients, and turned starchy plants into a more reliable source of energy. Wild barley and oats were sometimes ground into a coarse flour, mixed with water, and cooked on hot stones. Roots and tubers were roasted in the embers, turning hard, starchy lumps into something soft and nourishing. This quiet innovation widened diets far beyond meat and berries, letting people thrive in new places. Cooking a plant may seem a simple thing, but it marks a profound step. The ability to transform the natural world into something more sustaining, an early hint of the farming revolution still to come. Grinding stones transformed tough plants into food. Before farming, people already experimented with grinding wild plants using heavy stones. Grinding stones found at ancient sites bear the smooth, worn surfaces of long use, where seeds, nuts, and roots were crushed into flour or paste. This innovation transformed diets, making tough grains digestible and unlocking nourishment that raw plants could never provide. Ground seeds could be cooked into porridge or simple flatbreads, the distant ancestors of farming's later staples. The work was hard, hours of grinding for a modest yield, yet it allowed communities to survive lean seasons and to widen their food beyond the hunt. Some of the oldest grinding stones are so carefully made that they lasted for generations. Their worn hollows, polished by countless repetitions, are quiet monuments to patience and persistence. They mark the first steps toward agriculture, where plants were no longer merely gathered, but tended and processed with care, long before the first field was ever sown. The first bread was baked long before agriculture. Bread feels like the child of farming, yet evidence suggests it was being made long before crops were ever cultivated. Archaeologists studying a site in Jordan uncovered the charred remains of flatbread more than 14,000 years old, thousands of years before the first domesticated cereals. This bread was made from wild grains gathered by hand, crushed into flour between stones, mixed with water, and baked on hot rock. It produced a simple, flat loaf. The process shows a remarkable knowledge of ingredients, tools, and technique. Bread represents more than food. It is planning, preparation, and patience made edible. To make it, people had to gather large amounts of grain, grind it, and bake it in a shared space. The discovery pushes the origins of baking deep into the Stone Age, showing that people were already experimenting with complex foods long before farming made grain a staple. Bread, it turns out, began as a Stone Age invention. Shell middens reveal ancient diets and settlements. Shell middens, great heaps of discarded shells, are among the most revealing sights of the Stone Age. Found along coasts and rivers, these mounds of oyster, clam, and mussel shells can rise several meters high and stretch for hundreds of meters. They are the remains of countless meals gathered over centuries. Within them, archaeologists find tools, bones, and traces of daily life, showing that these were not mere rubbish piles but long-lived settlements. Their layers preserve a record of diet, climate, and environment, offering insight into how people adapted to life beside the water. Shell middens show that seafood was not an occasional treat but central to survival for many groups. They also reveal careful planning, since gathering shellfish was often seasonal and shared. These great mounds are silent monuments to meals eaten and lives lived, showing that the rhythm of the tides shaped human communities many thousands of years ago. People ate fish and shellfish far earlier than believed. For many years, archaeologists assumed that Stone Age diets centered mostly on big game, on mammoths and bison, but discoveries of fish bones, shell middens, and fishing tools have revealed a very different story. People were eating fish and shellfish far earlier than once thought, stretching back tens of thousands of years. This included not only small coastal shellfish, but also freshwater fish caught with hooks, spears, and nets. Fish provided protein and nutrients that supported the growth of the brain, and may even have shaped the development of human intelligence. Shellfish, easy to gather and richly abundant, offered reliable food even when a hunt failed. Some sites suggest great feasts of shellfish, with thousands of shells discarded in a single layer. The use of rivers, lakes, and coasts shows real adaptability and ingenuity. The Stone Age was not only the age of mammoth hunters, it was also the age of fishers and gatherers, tied to water as much as to land. The oldest known art survives on cave walls. Some of the oldest surviving artworks on Earth lie hidden deep within caves. Tens of thousands of years ago, people painted vivid images of animals, mammoths, bison, horses, and lions in places like Chauvet and Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain. These paintings were made with natural pigments such as red ochre and black charcoal, applied with brushes of animal hair, or blown onto the walls through hollow bones. The detail is astonishing. Horses gallop with arched necks. Bison lower their horns in challenge. Lions stalk in silence. These caves were more than shelters. They became vast canvases where imagination left its mark. Some images may have been part of rituals, others teaching tools, and some perhaps simply expressions of beauty. Whatever their purpose, they endure as windows into a world where art was already central to human life, proof that creativity reaches back to the very roots of our species. Ancient artists used stone lamps to light their work. The deepest cave paintings could never have been made without light. To pierce the darkness, Stone Age people crafted simple lamps from hollowed stone, filled them with animal fat, and lit them with a wick of moss or fiber. These lamps burned with a steady glow, casting warm light across the walls. In some caves, soot marks still remain on the ceilings, silent evidence of small fires carried inside. The flicker of flame gave a kind of movement to the painted animals, making horses seem to gallop and bison to shift within the shadows. These lamps were more than tools. They created atmosphere. They transformed pitch-black caverns into spaces alive with imagery, ritual, and story. Imagine the quiet, the smell of burning fat, the glow of flame, and the slow rhythm of a painter at work. These lamps remind us that even in the deepest darkness, humans sought ways to see, to create, and to leave something behind. People painted with ochre long before written language. Ochre, a naturally occurring red pigment, is one of humanity's oldest artistic materials. Archaeologists have found evidence of its use stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, long before the invention of writing or farming. People ground ochre into powder and mixed it with fat, water, or saliva to make paint. With it, they decorated cave walls, colored their tools, and rubbed pigment into skin and hair. At burial sites, ochre was sprinkled over the dead, suggesting a symbolic or ritual role. Its bright red may have stood for life, for blood, or for renewal. To use ochre was to create meaning beyond survival, to add color and symbol to a world of stone and fire. Its persistence across continents and cultures shows how deeply humans have always connected to color. Long before words could describe an idea, red ochre was already painting one. A pigment older than history itself, still speaking to us through its stains. Caves everywhere are marked with human handprints. One of the most striking and universal images of Stone Age art is the handprint. To make one, a person pressed a hand against the cave wall and blew pigment around it, leaving a pale silhouette outlined in color. These stencils appear across Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas, spanning tens of thousands of years. Some caves hold hundreds of them, scattered across ceilings and walls, layered one over another like a silent gathering of hands. Each print is deeply personal, the exact shape and size of a hand long vanished, yet somehow still present. Some belong to adults, others to children. Their meaning is uncertain, perhaps signatures, perhaps rituals, perhaps simple marks of belonging. But whatever they meant, they are powerful. To stand in a cave surrounded by these prints is to be surrounded by a chorus of presence, a reminder that people reached out to leave themselves in stone, the hands still reaching across the millennia. Ancient humans painted the animals they hunted and feared. Cave art shows not only creatures admired from afar, but those hunted for survival or feared as predators. Bison, mammoths, horses, and deer fill many painted walls, often drawn with remarkable accuracy. Lions, rhinos, and bears appear too, animals that posed a threat as much as an inspiration. Some of these images may have been part of rituals, made to ensure success in the hunt, or to show respect for powerful beasts. A few paintings show animals wounded by spears, hinting at teaching or symbolic intent. Others depict whole herds in motion, capturing the rhythm of life on the plains. These images remind us that Stone Age people lived in constant relationship with the animals around them, dependent on some, threatened by others, inspired by them all. The art was not only decoration, but an expression of connection, awe, and understanding, a dialogue in pigment between humans and the wild world they lived within. Some cave art depicts animals now extinct. Among the most haunting details of Stone Age art is the presence of creatures that no longer exist. Cave walls show woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, cave lions, and giant deer, animals that have since vanished from the earth. These images are not only art, they are records of lost worlds, snapshots of ecosystems that disappeared thousands of years ago. For archaeologists, they offer rare glimpses of species otherwise known only from scattered bones. For the rest of us, they are windows into the imagination of people who lived beside these animals, watched their movements, and chose to capture them in pigment. To stand before a painting of an extinct creature is to feel time gently collapse. Both the artist and the animal are long gone, yet their meeting still endures upon the stone. These images remind us that art can preserve memory across the ages, carrying the presence of the vanished into the present day. Humans carved portable art from bone and ivory. Not all Stone Age art was painted on cave walls. People also carved small portable objects, some no larger than the palm of a hand. Figurines of mammoth ivory, antler, and bone depict humans, animals, and abstract shapes. Other carvings show animals in astonishing detail, from crouching lions to running horses, their forms captured with a sculptor's eye. These objects could be carried from camp to camp, traveling across the landscape as people moved. Some were treasured enough to be buried alongside their owners. A carved animal might have stood for a spirit, a prayer for a successful hunt, or a memory of a powerful creature. The care and skill they show reveal that art was not only decoration, but something woven into daily life and belief. Portable art tells us that creativity was never bound to a single place. In these small carvings, held and carried and kept, we glimpse the very first sculptures of humankind. The Venus figurines may have held many meanings. The Venus figurines are among the most mysterious artifacts of the Stone Age. These small carvings, often made of ivory, stone, or bone, depict women with exaggerated features, full forms, and rounded shapes. They appear across Europe and into parts of Asia, stretching back tens of thousands of years. Scholars have long debated their meaning. Some suggest they were fertility symbols, celebrating motherhood and survival in harsh times. Others think they were teaching tools or charms for hunters, or perhaps even self-portraits carved by women themselves. What is certain is that they carried a significance far beyond simple decoration. Their repetition across so many regions suggests shared ideas and values spread among distant communities. To hold one is to touch a belief that spanned generations, a belief in the power of the human form and in the deep cycles of life and survival. They remain among the most iconic and enigmatic creations of the entire Stone Age. People tamed fire to harden the first clay figurines. Clay was not only shaped into pottery after the coming of farming. In fact, it was being molded and fired long before. Archaeologists have found small figurines, some more than 20,000 years old, made of clay hardened by fire. These were often animals, carefully shaped and then placed into hearths or pits, where the flames baked them into permanence. Some figurines were deliberately broken, perhaps as part of a ritual or symbol. Others survived whole, lasting tens of thousands of years. To harden clay was to discover a process that would one day revolutionize storage, cooking, and building. But even in its earliest use, it revealed imagination, the desire to create figures not from stone or bone, but from the very earth itself, transformed by flame. These tiny sculptures remind us that experiment has always been part of human life, and that even in the depths of the Ice Age, people were already shaping Earth with fire. Humans carved delicate patterns into ostrich eggshells. Among the most fragile artifacts of the Stone Age are decorated ostrich eggshells. In Africa, people etched intricate geometric patterns into the shells tens of thousands of years ago. These fragments, some still whole, show carefully engraved lines, crosshatches, and spirals. Ostrich eggs were not only containers for food or water, their shells became small canvases. Some were used as water flasks, carried across dry country with plugs of grass sealing the tops. Decorating them may have marked ownership, identity, or ritual meaning. The designs suggest a symbolic language long before writing, a way of communicating or preserving tradition through pattern. To carve on eggshell was an act of great precision. Too much pressure, and the fragile surface would shatter. These artifacts reveal that even the most practical of objects could be turned into art, and that creativity was already woven into daily survival, carried lightly in the palm of a hand. Some of the earliest jewelry was made from eagle talons. Long before gold or silver, people adorned themselves with what nature offered. One of the most striking examples comes from eagle talons, carefully collected, polished, and strung together as jewelry more than 40,000 years ago. Archaeologists have found sets of talons with wear marks, showing they were once part of necklaces or bracelets. These objects had no practical function. They were purely symbolic, worn for meaning, beauty, or status. The choice of eagle talons is telling. Eagles were powerful hunters of the sky, and wearing their claws may have been a way to carry their strength, their prestige, or their spirit. These early ornaments reveal that even in harsh Ice Age landscapes, people expressed identity, belief, and creativity. Jewelry made from eagle talons is among the first known signs that humans sought not merely to survive, but to display who they were and who they wished to become. Beads of shell were worn as symbols of identity. One of the most enduring forms of Stone Age ornament is the bead. People drilled tiny holes into shells, bones, and stones, then threaded them onto cords to make necklaces, bracelets, and decorations. Some of these beads are more than 100,000 years old, among the earliest evidence of symbolic behavior anywhere. Beads were never mere decoration. They carried meaning. Wearing them could signal belonging to a group, an achievement, or a role within a community. Some were made from shells gathered far from the settlement, hinting at long journeys or distant trade. The effort to shape, polish, and string these ornaments shows that beauty and symbol mattered as much as survival. Each bead was both personal and social, a tiny piece of identity worn close against the skin. In the quiet world of the Stone Age, beads spoke silently of who people were and of how they wished to be seen by others. Early communities painted their bodies with pigment. art was not confined to caves and tools. It was also carried on the body. Pigments such as red ochre were used for body painting tens of thousands of years ago. People smeared designs onto skin, hair, and even clothing, creating patterns that may have marked identity, status, or ritual. Some burials show bones still stained with pigment, suggesting that painted skin was part of daily or ceremonial life. Body painting might have been used for ceremonies, hunting rituals, or group belonging, much like tattoos or uniforms today. In harsh climates, pigment may also have served practical ends, offering some protection against sun or insects. The act of painting the body shows that people already understood the power of appearance, how color and symbol could transform an individual into something more. In the Stone Age, art did not only rest on walls, it lived and breathed upon the human form itself. The first flutes were carved from bird bones. Song is one of the most ancient of the languages we share, and it reaches back deep into the Stone Age. Archaeologists have found flutes carved from the hollow wing bones of birds, dating back more than 30,000 years. These flutes have carefully placed finger holes, showing deliberate design and a real knowledge of sound. When replicas are played, they produce clear, haunting notes that echo in caverns, just as they once did. Some flutes were even made from the tusks of mammoths, split and hollowed with extraordinary care. These instruments reveal that Stone Age people were not only hunters and builders, but also musicians. Their playing may have been part of ritual, of storytelling, or of simple enjoyment around the fire. The fact that people chose to craft instruments so long ago shows that rhythm and melody are as deeply human as tool-making or survival. Even in the harsh Ice Age, people filled the darkness with song. Song was woven into ritual around the fire. Sound, like art, seems inseparable from the human spirit, and its roots reach deep into the Stone Age. Bone flutes, drums of stretched hide, and rattles of shell or seed may all have been used in ritual gatherings. A shared rhythm could unify a group, turning scattered individuals into a community that moved, clapped, and sang together. In ritual, it could guide a trance, echo through a cave, or seem to call upon unseen powers. Imagine firelit ceremonies where voices rose together, echoing off stone walls as carved animals watched in silence. Such sound needed no written notes to carry meaning. It could express joy, fear, longing, or reverence in ways that words never could. The presence of instruments alongside ritual sites suggests that rhythm and melody were woven into ceremony from the very beginning. To lift such sound in the Stone Age was to connect with one another, with nature, and perhaps with the divine. Flute songs may have echoed through painted caves. Some of the earliest flutes ever discovered were carved from bird bone more than 30,000 years ago. These delicate instruments have carefully drilled holes, allowing a player to produce many different notes. In the hands of a Stone Age musician, they could shape haunting, unforgettable melodies. Imagine standing in a dark cave, firelight flickering against painted walls as the sound of a flute fills the air. The cave itself would have acted as an amplifier, echoing the notes through its chambers and passages. Combined with the art and the ritual, that sound must have created a powerful and overwhelming experience. These songs were never written down, and the instruments remained silent until played again by modern hands. When researchers reproduce them, the sound is eerie and beautiful, a reminder that the urge to make melody has always lived within us. Long before orchestras or choirs, the first flute songs rose in painted caves, carried into eternity by stone and bone. The origins of storytelling reach back to the Stone Age. Storytelling is older than writing, older than cities, older even than farming. Around the fire, Stone Age people surely shared tales of the hunt, of spirits, of ancestors and dreams. Archaeologists cannot dig up spoken stories, but the clues remain in cave paintings, carvings, and ritual objects. A sequence of animal images, a handprint, a carved figurine. Each may have sparked an explanation passed from one generation to the next. Stories helped teach children about danger and tradition and gave meaning to the world around them. They may have explained the stars, the animals, or the deep mysteries of death and birth. Storytelling bound groups together, preserving knowledge without any need for writing. To imagine the first tales is to picture flickering firelight, shadows moving on stone walls, and voices rising in rhythm. The Stone Age was the birthplace of stories, a tradition that has carried human imagination through every age since. Some cave art may have served as teaching tools. The vivid animal paintings in caves like Lascaux and Chauvet may have been more than decoration or ritual. Some scholars believe they were teaching tools. The way animals are drawn in motion, heads lowered, legs bent, or struck by painted spears, may have been lessons for young hunters. A painted wall could serve as a kind of classroom, where elders explained the behavior of bison or the danger of a rhinoceros. Others may have shown tracking signs, teaching how to read footprints and patterns in the ground. In this way, cave art was not only artistic expression, but practical knowledge encoded in images. Teaching through pictures gave hunters and gatherers a way to pass down skill across the generations. Standing in a painted cave, you can almost imagine the voices echoing as someone explained the ways of the animals. These Stone Age walls may have been among the very first blackboards. Some paintings show beings half human, half animal. Among the most mysterious images of the Stone Age are figures that seem half human, half animal. Cave paintings and carvings reveal beings with human bodies but the heads or features of lions, birds, or deer. These hybrid forms may represent shamans in trance, imagining themselves merging with animal spirits. They could also reflect myths or rituals now lost, where people blurred the boundary between themselves and the creatures they depended upon. The famous Lion Man figurine from Germany, carved more than 30,000 years ago, shows a human body crowned with the head of a great cat. Such figures suggest a world where imagination was boundless, and where people saw themselves not as separate from nature but deeply entangled with it. These hybrids may have been among the first gods, spirits, or heroes, born in the minds of people who dreamed of transformation and of connection with the living world. People imagined mythical creatures tens of thousands of years ago, long before dragons, griffins, or unicorns appeared in written myth. Stone Age people were already imagining beings that never existed. Human-animal hybrids, fantastical carvings, and symbolic figures show that imagination reached far beyond the real. Some of these images may capture dreams, visions, or trance states, given form in pigment and stone. The creation of mythical beings reveals the birth of abstract thought, the ability to picture something that does not exist and then share it with others. These creatures may have been protectors, teachers, or symbols of power, carrying meanings we can now only guess at. They prove that creativity and invention are not recent traits, but fundamental to who we are. To imagine a creature of spirit and flesh, half real and half dreamed, is to step into the very beginnings of myth, and to see that the roots of fantasy stretch back tens of thousands of years. Ritual masks were carved from stone. At some Stone Age sites, archaeologists have uncovered masks carved from stone, with hollowed eyes and stylized features. These masks are among the earliest evidence of ritual performance. Worn during ceremonies, they may have transformed the wearer into an ancestor, an animal spirit, or a supernatural being. Masks served as bridges between the human world and the spiritual, allowing a person to step outside themselves. Their making required both skill and imagination, shaping cold stone into a face that could inspire awe or fear. Masks may have been used in dances, funerals, or rites of passage, their features flickering and shifting in the firelight. To wear a mask was to take on another identity, to move at once in the world of people and the world of spirits. These ancient masks remind us that ritual, performance, and transformation have been part of human culture since its earliest days. Shamanic figures appear in the oldest art. Among the many images of animals in Stone Age caves, some show figures that appear shamanic, human forms dressed in animal skins, antlers, or feathers. These figures may represent spiritual leaders, healers, or mediators between the living and the unseen. In societies without written language, such people carried the knowledge of plants, healing, and ritual, guiding their communities through birth, death, and uncertainty. The art shows that these roles were not hidden, but celebrated, placed alongside the mammoths and lions as a vital part of existence. Some depictions show dancing or altered states, suggesting trance rituals where the shaman imagined crossing into other realms. These figures hint at the earliest roots of religion and spirituality, the idea that certain people could travel beyond the ordinary and return with wisdom. In their painted forms, we glimpse humanity's first attempts to capture the sacred roles that held their communities together. Early hunters brought down mammoths with strategy. Mammoths were among the largest and most dangerous animals ever hunted by humans. Bringing one down took far more than strength. It required strategy, cooperation, and technology. Evidence shows that hunters used coordinated drives, herding mammoths toward bogs, ravines, or natural traps where they could be overwhelmed. Spears tipped with stone were hurled in groups, piercing the thick hide. Sometimes fire and noise drove the herds into places of vulnerability. The remains of mammoths surrounded by clusters of stone tools show the aftermath of such hunts. Immense undertakings that could feed a whole community for weeks. Every part of the animal was used: meat for food, hides for shelter, bones and tusks for tools and building. Hunting mammoths was dangerous, but success meant survival. These hunts reveal the ingenuity and courage of Stone Age people, whose cooperation allowed them to face and overcome the giants of the Ice Age. Cave lions were among the predators people faced. Alongside mammoths and bison, Stone Age people shared their world with cave lions, one of the largest big cats ever to exist. These lions were larger than modern African lions, the males possibly lacking manes, which gave them a sleek and formidable appearance. Cave lions stalked the same prey as humans, creating direct competition for survival. Cave paintings show them in great detail, sometimes portrayed in groups, a sign that people watched them closely. Some archaeological evidence even hints at ritual connections, with lion bones arranged in deliberate patterns. Facing such a predator required vigilance and courage. A lion could threaten a camp or snatch prey before people could claim it. Yet these animals also inspired awe, becoming part of story, ritual, and art. To live in the Stone Age was to share the world with cave lions, powerful hunters whose presence shaped not only survival, but imagination and a deep respect for the wild. Woolly rhinoceroses roamed beside early people. During the Stone Age, the vast plains of Eurasia were home to woolly rhinoceroses, massive animals covered in thick fur, with long curved horns jutting from their snouts. These creatures grazed on grasses and shrubs, enduring the Ice Age cold beneath their heavy coats. They were formidable and dangerous, and evidence suggests that people sometimes hunted them, though at great risk. Cave paintings depict woolly rhinos in vivid detail, showing their distinctive horns and enormous bulk. The fact that people chose to paint them reveals the impression they made on human life. Their bones have been found in association with stone tools, hinting at encounters that ended in the hunt. Like mammoths, they offered meat, hides, and material, but they also embodied danger. To walk the Stone Age steppe was to walk among giants, and the woolly rhinoceros was one of the most awe-inspiring and most feared of them all. Humans shared the Ice Age world with giant deer. Among the most striking animals of the Stone Age was the giant deer, often called the Irish elk, though it ranged far beyond Ireland. These enormous creatures carried antlers spanning up to 12 feet across, making them some of the largest deer ever to live. They grazed on open plains and grasslands, sharing the world with mammoths, rhinos, and bison. For humans, giant deer were both a source of food and a symbol of awe. Cave art depicts them with careful attention to their immense antlers. Hunting them must have been difficult, for their size and speed made them formidable, yet their meat and hides were invaluable. The image of a human hunter standing beneath the towering antlers of a giant deer captures the sheer scale of life in the Ice Age, a world where people lived among animals that seemed almost mythic in their size and presence. Dogs may have been the first animal ever domesticated. Long before cattle, sheep, or horses were tamed, people formed a partnership with wolves that would become the dog. Archaeological sites show evidence of domesticated dogs as early as 30,000 years ago, their remains buried beside humans. This relationship transformed hunting, protection, and companionship. Dogs could track prey, guard the camp, and give warmth on cold nights. In return, humans offered food, care, and shelter. Over generations, the wolves that were friendlier, calmer, and more cooperative slowly became dogs, forming a new kind of creature bound to us by need and trust. This domestication was not only practical, but deeply emotional. Burials show dogs laid carefully with their owners, sometimes decorated with beads. The bond between humans and dogs began in the Stone Age and continues unbroken today. It was the first great partnership between two species, one that reshaped survival, culture, and the very idea of companionship. The wolf-dog partnership changed hunting forever. The domestication of dogs had a profound effect on how humans hunted. With their speed, stamina, and keen sense of smell, dogs became unmatched partners in tracking prey. They could detect animals long before people could, follow trails invisible to human eyes, and help drive game into traps or ambushes. This cooperation increased hunting success dramatically, providing a more reliable supply of food. Dogs also served as guards, alerting a group to predators or intruders. Their presence may even have influenced human migration, making it possible to settle in harsher lands with greater security. Archaeological finds show dog remains buried with care, a sign of how much they were valued in daily life. The wolf-dog partnership was not just a convenience, it was a revolution in the strategies of survival. By working together, two species forged a bond that would echo down through the millennia, changing the course of both their histories forever. Clothing transformed survival in the harshest climates. Before tailored clothing, people relied on draped hides for warmth. But with the invention of sewing, Stone Age communities could create garments fitted to the human body, allowing both movement and far greater insulation. Clothing became one of the most transformative technologies of the age. It turned icy plains into habitable land and enabled migration into Arctic regions where an unprotected human simply could not survive. Clothing also became a canvas for identity, decorated with beads, fringes, or pigment to show status or belonging. Some burials reveal individuals dressed in stitched garments covered in ornament, proof that clothing carried symbolic meaning as well as practical value. The ability to dress for survival was as vital as fire or tools. With stitched clothing, people wrapped themselves not only in hides, but in ingenuity, showing that adaptation was as much about invention as it was about endurance. Humans adapted to Arctic environments with furs and tools. The Ice Age forced humans into some of the harshest conditions imaginable. In the frozen north, survival depended on ingenuity. People hunted reindeer, mammoths, and seals, animals that gave both food and vital materials. Skins were scraped, softened, and sewn into warm clothing, layered against bitter winds. Bone and antler were carved into needles, awls, and spear points, while snow and ice themselves became building material for temporary shelters. Fires burned in carefully sheltered hearths, fueled by bone and fat when wood was scarce. Hunting had to account for animals on the move, requiring seasonal camps and constant travel. Archaeological sites show that humans did not merely survive in the Arctic, but thrived, building cultures deeply tied to ice and snow. These adaptations prove that even without metal or wheels, people were capable of extraordinary resilience. The Arctic was not a barrier. It was a challenge that people met and overcame with ingenuity. Temporary huts were built from mammoth bones. In the cold expanses of Ice Age Europe, some groups built remarkable shelters from the bones of mammoths. Circular huts made of tusks, skulls, and massive bones were arranged with care and covered with hides to keep out the wind. Some were decorated with carved bone or painted with pigment, becoming far more than simple shelters. Inside, hearths glowed and families gathered, protected by the very animals they had once hunted. These structures reveal both ingenuity and a kind of respect. Turning bone into architecture required planning and cooperation. Archaeologists have found entire villages of mammoth bone huts, showing that people could build stable, long-lasting dwellings even in the harshest climates. To sit inside such a hut was to live surrounded by the memory of the hunt, sheltered by the remains of Ice Age giants. These bone houses are among the most extraordinary examples of survival architecture in the whole ancient world. Some shelters used reindeer antlers as their frame. Not every Stone Age shelter was built from mammoth bone. In regions where reindeer were plentiful, people collected antlers and used them as building material. Antlers, light yet strong, could be lashed together to form the frame of a hut, later covered with hide or bark. Their use shows remarkable flexibility, adapting architecture to the animals and materials of each environment. Archaeological evidence suggests these structures were both practical and symbolic. Reindeer were central to survival, providing meat, hides, and tools, and now their antlers sheltered the living as well. This kind of resourcefulness reveals the creativity of Stone Age people, who saw potential in every part of the animals they hunted. To build a home from antlers was to turn the wilderness itself into a source of refuge, blending survival with ingenuity in ways that still astonish archaeologists today. Stone Age campsites preserve hearths and post holes. Some archaeological sites preserve whole Stone Age camps, complete with hearths, post holes, and scattered tools. These traces reveal how people arranged their lives. Hearths mark the center of daily activity, where meals were cooked and warmth was shared. Post holes show where wooden supports once stood, holding up shelters of hide, bark, or bone. Around them, stone flakes, animal bones, and ornaments mark the remains of tasks of butchering, tool-making, and weaving. Some camps were seasonal, set up near rivers during the salmon runs, or across the plains during the migrations of game. Others were longer-lived, used year after year, building up layers of ash and debris. Each site is like a snapshot of a community, frozen in soil and stone. These camps remind us that Stone Age life was not aimless wandering. It was organized, social, and patterned, centered on hearths and homes that anchored people within their landscapes. People dug storage pits to keep food safe. Food security mattered as much in the Stone Age as it does now. To preserve their supplies, people dug storage pits into the ground, sometimes lining them with stone, clay, or grass to keep the moisture out. These pits could hold nuts, dried meat, or roots, protecting them from decay and from animals. In colder climates, a pit acted like a natural refrigerator, keeping food frozen through the winter. In warmer regions, some were sealed with clay or covered with flat stones to hold in cool, dry air. Storage pits mark an important step towards stability, the ability to save food for lean times rather than living only from day to day. They also suggest planning and cooperation, since maintaining a shared store required trust within a community. These humble pits, carved into the earth, reveal foresight and strategy, the quiet beginnings of a mindset that would one day lead to farming and permanent homes. Ancient rafts and canoes carried people across water. The Stone Age was not confined to land. Evidence shows that people built simple rafts and dugout canoes, letting them cross rivers, lakes, and even stretches of open sea. Some of the oldest watercraft ever found are dugouts, carved from a single tree trunk, shaped and hollowed with fire and stone tools. These vessels carried people and goods, enabling fishing, trade, and exploration. Reaching an island required planning, cooperation, and skill at navigation, proof that Stone Age groups were far from primitive wanderers. They were seafarers, willing to risk the open water in search of new lands. The spread of humans to Australia more than 40,000 years ago could only have been achieved with boats, making these early craft among the most important technologies in all of history. Each raft or canoe was more than wood and effort. It was a bridge to new worlds, expanding the horizons of humanity, one crossing at a time. Early mariners crossed open sea to reach Australia. One of the greatest feats of Stone Age seafaring was the settlement of Australia. More than 40,000 years ago, people traveled across open sea to reach this vast continent, carrying with them tools, fire, and knowledge. Australia was never joined to Asia by land, which means these journeys demanded real watercraft and real navigation. Groups may have built sturdy rafts or canoes from wood and plant fiber, lashing them together with cord. They would have needed to plan their supplies, read the currents, and perhaps even follow the stars. Once they arrived, they adapted to entirely new landscapes, filled with giant kangaroos, wombats, and enormous flightless birds. This migration shows that even in the deep Stone Age, humans were not confined by geography. They were explorers, capable of crossing seas and turning strange new environments into home. The crossing to Australia stands as one of the earliest and boldest chapters in humanity's long journey. The first Americans arrived during the Stone Age. The Americas were the last great continents to be settled by humans in the Stone Age. Evidence suggests that people crossed from Siberia into Alaska more than 15,000 years ago, when lower sea levels exposed the Bering Land Bridge. But even this crossing demanded extraordinary endurance, over vast icy plains stretching hundreds of miles, home to mammoths, bison, and wolves. Other theories propose that some groups hugged the Pacific coast in boats, following shorelines rich with fish and shellfish. However they came, the first Americans carried Stone Age tools, fire, and tradition into an entirely new world. They spread with astonishing speed, from Arctic tundra to tropical forest, adapting as they went. Within a few thousand years, people lived from the frozen north to the southern tip of South America. The peopling of the Americas was a Stone Age epic, a story of migration, adaptation, and relentless human curiosity. People carried obsidian hundreds of miles to trade. Obsidian, the glossy black volcanic glass, was one of the most prized materials of the Stone Age. Its edges could be sharper than modern surgical steel, making it ideal for blades and points. But its sources were limited, found only in certain volcanic regions. Archaeologists have discovered obsidian artifacts hundreds of miles from their origin, proof that people carried or traded them across vast distances. In some cases, tools made from a single mountain's obsidian have been found scattered across whole regions, revealing the reach of early networks. To hold such a blade was not only to own a tool, but to hold a piece of a faraway place. Each shard linked communities, separated by rivers, mountains, and plains. This long-distance exchange reveals that Stone Age people were not isolated wanderers, but part of sprawling connections, carrying rare treasures by hand, step by patient step, across the ancient world. Amber was collected and traded long before cities. Amber, fossilized tree resin with its warm golden glow, captivated people long before the rise of towns or markets. In the Stone Age, beads of amber were gathered from coastal regions where it washed ashore, often far from where people lived. Some of the earliest ornaments ever found are strings of amber beads, shaped and polished with care. Their beauty served no practical function. They were worn for meaning, status, or perhaps spiritual belief. Archaeologists have found amber objects far from any natural source, proving that it traveled long distances through trade. For early people, amber may have been more than decoration. Some pieces held trapped insects or leaves, tiny time capsules that must have seemed almost magical. The shimmering glow of amber, born of ancient forests and hardened into something like stone, was among the first precious materials people sought and carried, a symbol of beauty in a hard world. Trade networks stretched across whole continents. The Stone Age world was vast, yet people connected across incredible distances. Obsidian appears in sites hundreds of miles from its source. Shells from distant coasts turn up deep inland. Amber, flint, and pigment traveled in hands and packs across mountains and plains. These objects prove that long before the caravans or ships of empires, trade networks already spanned continents. Exchange was not only about goods for survival, but about beauty, rarity, and meaning. To carry an object from afar was to carry a story, a link to another community. Trade created bonds of trust and shared culture, weaving together a scattered humanity. These networks show that Stone Age people were not isolated, but cosmopolitan in their own way, part of webs of exchange stretching far beyond their horizons. Each traded bead or blade was proof that curiosity and connection have always been central to our species. Ancient roads connected villages and monuments. Archaeologists have discovered traces of ancient pathways linking villages, tombs, and ritual sites. These early roads, often marked by ditches or lines of stone, show that movement and connection were central to Stone Age life. People traveled between settlements, carrying goods, stories, and traditions. Roads also served symbolic ends, guiding processions during rituals, or linking the world of the living with the spaces of the dead. Some alignments stretch for miles, their straightness suggesting deliberate design rather than a chance trail. These paths remind us that Stone Age life was not isolated, but interconnected, communities bound together by shared spaces and journeys. To walk an ancient road is to step where countless feet once passed, carrying burdens, offerings, or memories. These silent lines in the earth are among the earliest expressions of infrastructure, proof that people sought not only to survive, but to link their worlds together. Footprints preserved in mud reveal family journeys. In some places, Stone Age people left behind traces far more intimate than tools or bones. Footprints preserved in mud, ash, or clay. These fossilized tracks capture single moments in time, tens of thousands of years old. One site in Tanzania shows a group walking together across wet ground, adults and children side by side. In New Mexico, a long trail of prints reveals people carrying loads, pausing and continuing on, a frozen record of a journey. These tracks are astonishing because they are not artifacts, but direct evidence of movement, preserved like photographs in stone. They show gait, speed, even pauses and stumbles. Some prints are so detailed that you can make out the toes, the arches, and the small slips in the mud. These footprints remind us that the Stone Age was not only tools and art, but real people moving through real landscapes, families, children, and groups leaving their marks step by step. Some ancient tracks show children playing beside adults. Footprints often reveal more than a simple journey. At some sites, the tracks of children show clear signs of play, small feet darting back and forth, circling or overlapping the paths of adults. In one famous discovery in France, children's prints alongside torch marks suggest they explored a cave together, running, pausing, and perhaps even laughing in the dark. These tracks capture joy, curiosity, and the daily rhythm of family life in the Stone Age. They remind us that children were part of every community, learning and exploring alongside adults. Archaeological sites are filled with tools and weapons, but footprints tell another story, that people laughed, played, and lived as families, just as we do today. The survival of such fleeting evidence is rare, but when it is found, it bridges the gulf of time. Across tens of thousands of years, a child's playful steps still ripple with life. Footprints in Britain are nearly 1 million years old. On the coast of Britain, shifting tides once revealed a discovery almost beyond belief. Human footprints nearly 1 million years old. Preserved in ancient mud, these tracks belong to a small group, men, women, and children, walking along a river estuary. The impressions were fragile, lasting only days once exposed, but they were carefully documented before the sea erased them again. These prints predate modern humans, likely belonging to an earlier kind of human living in northern Europe during a warmer age. They stand among the oldest footprints ever found outside Africa. To imagine a family walking across a mudflat nearly 1 million years ago is to stretch the mind across time itself. These footprints are not artifacts made by tool or pigment, but direct evidence of life, as immediate and personal as any step we take today, linking us to ancestors almost unimaginably distant. Ancient burials reveal deep care for the dead. In many Stone Age burials, the way a body was laid shows that death was never treated carelessly. Some were placed in curled, fetal-like poses, as if returning to the position of birth. Others were arranged with care, arms folded, heads propped upon stones. Graves were sometimes lined with slabs, or dug into special pits. The act of burial itself required real effort, especially in frozen or rocky ground, and suggests a deep sense of respect for the dead. Some graves show signs of repeated visits, disturbed layers of soil, fresh additions of pigment or ornament, hinting that the living returned to honor those who had passed. These practices reveal that memory and ritual were already part of life tens of thousands of years ago. Caring for the dead marks a profound threshold. It shows that people recognized the weight of loss and sought to preserve meaning even beyond death. People sprinkled red ochre over their dead. Red ochre appears again and again in Stone Age burials. Bodies were sprinkled or painted with the pigment before being laid to rest, turning the soil around them a deep crimson. This practice is found across continents, from Europe to Africa to Asia, stretching back tens of thousands of years. Its meaning is unknown, but its consistency suggests it carried a profound significance. Red may have symbolized life, blood, or renewal. Perhaps it marked a return to the earth, or a way of guiding the dead into another realm. In some burials, ochre was used so heavily that it stained the very bones, which remain red even today. Its presence shows that people did not see death as a simple ending, but as a passage requiring care, ritual, and symbol. The use of red ochre is among the earliest evidence of belief, proof that humans carried meaning into the grave as surely as they carried tools. Some graves hold beads, tools, and animal parts. Stone Age graves often hold more than bones. Archaeologists have found burials where the dead were accompanied by necklaces, beads, tools, and even the remains of animals. A child's grave might contain strings of beads, while an adult's could hold a carefully crafted weapon or a decorated bone. In some cases, the bones of animals, antlers, tusks, or whole skulls were placed alongside the human dead, suggesting symbolic ties between people and the creatures they depended upon. These objects were not random. They were chosen, prepared, and placed with intention. Such offerings reveal that people valued memory, identity, and perhaps even the hope of an afterlife. To bury tools and ornaments with the dead was to give them meaning beyond daily use. It shows that life in the Stone Age was not only practical survival, but also emotional, symbolic, and deeply human in its care for those who had gone. The first cemeteries date back tens of thousands of years. Not every burial stood alone. Some were grouped together in what may be the first cemeteries. Sites like Sungir in Russia and Kufse in Israel contain many burials in close proximity, sometimes with elaborate grave goods and pigment. These groupings suggest that certain places were chosen again and again for the dead, creating spaces of memory and community. A cemetery is more than a practical solution. It is a statement about belonging, that the dead remain tied to the land and to one another. In some cases, children and adults were buried side by side, reflecting family ties. Others show evidence of ritual, with shared objects placed among several graves. The existence of cemeteries so early in our history shows that people were already thinking collectively about death, identity, and place. They created not only shelters for the living, but sacred spaces for the dead, binding communities across generations. Some Stone Age skulls show healed signs of surgery. One of the most astonishing discoveries in Stone Age archaeology is trepanation, the deliberate drilling or scraping of a hole into the human skull. Skulls thousands of years old show clear evidence of this practice, with smoothed edges that reveal healing. This means that many people survived the procedure. The reasons remain debated. It may have been used to treat head injuries, relieve pressure, or serve some spiritual purpose. Performing it required skill, patience, and a knowledge of anatomy, for a mistake could easily be fatal. Around the holes, new bone growth forms, a sign of healing over weeks, months, or even years, with no antiseptic and no anesthesia, only stone tools and firelight. Some patients even lived to undergo the procedure more than once. This survival reveals that Stone Age groups had not only the technical skill to perform surgery, but the social bonds to nurse the sick back to health. Empathy and care stretch as deep into our past as any blade of stone. Early calendars were carved into bone and stone. Among the most fascinating of Stone Age artifacts are bones and stones etched with sequences of notches. Some of these markings appear to track the cycles of the moon, suggesting they served as early calendars, dating back more than 20,000 years. Such objects show that people were paying close attention to time, not only the passing of days, but the deeper patterns of the moon and seasons. This knowledge would have been invaluable, helping communities anticipate the migration of animals, the growth of plants, and the turning of the weather. The ability to record and track a cycle represents abstract thought, a move beyond immediate survival into long-term planning. These early calendars may have been teaching tools, ritual objects, or simple aids to memory, but they reveal a striking truth. Humans were already measuring the flow of time tens of thousands of years before writing, each carved notch a step toward the very idea of history. Stone Age people watched the stars for patterns. Even without written records, it is clear that Stone Age people observed the night sky. Megalithic sites, rock carvings, and alignments of stone all suggest a deliberate attention to the heavens. Stars and constellations may have been used to mark the seasons, guide a journey, or inspire a story. Watching the sky was not only practical but symbolic, a way of placing human life within a larger cosmos. Some caves featured dots and shapes that may represent constellations, perhaps the earliest attempts to map the stars. To track the movement of the heavens required patience and memory, watching across years and passing the knowledge down through generations. This shows that astronomy is not a modern science, but an ancient human instinct. Stone Age people looked up, saw order in the sky, and began weaving it into their survival and their imagination. From those first observations grew the long history of human stargazing. Some megaliths may have been early observatories. The great stone monuments raised in the later Stone Age suggest that people were not only watching the skies, but marking them with architecture. Some megaliths, such as stone circles and alignments, appear to correspond with the solstices or with lunar events. At certain times of year, sunlight or moonlight passes directly through the gaps between stones, illuminating a central point. These alignments suggest deliberate design, perhaps for tracking seasons, planning the year, or holding rituals tied to the sky. Such monuments demanded immense labor, cooperation, and foresight, far beyond the needs of daily survival. They reveal a community invested in time, order, and meaning. If these structures were indeed observatories, they stand among the first scientific instruments ever built, giant calendars of stone. To gather at a circle and watch the sun rise in perfect alignment would have been to witness not just a new day, but humanity's growing mastery of time itself. Göbekli Tepe was built long before farming or cities. In modern-day Turkey stands one of the most astonishing discoveries of all prehistory, Göbekli Tepe. Built more than 11,000 years ago, this site predates agriculture, pottery, and cities, and yet it is monumental in scale. Massive stone pillars, some weighing many tons, were arranged in circular enclosures and carved with images of animals and abstract symbols. What is extraordinary is that hunter-gatherers, people without farms or permanent villages, built it. This challenges the long-held idea that agriculture had to come first, before any monumental architecture. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that gathering for ritual and belief may have driven people to organize, to build, and eventually to settle. The site reveals that imagination and cooperation could produce works of staggering complexity. Even without metal or the wheel, it is one of the great puzzles of archaeology. A temple at the very dawn of human history, reshaping all we thought we knew. Its monumental pillars were carved with animal reliefs. The pillars of Göbekli Tepe are not bare stone. They are covered in detailed carvings of animals, lions, snakes, vultures, wild boars, and foxes. These images are vivid, sometimes stacked in layers, sometimes arranged in deliberate sequences. The carvings suggest stories, myths, or symbols now lost to us, but clearly of great importance to the people who made them. To carve such figures into stone demanded immense effort, precision, and artistic vision. These were not simple decorations, but part of a symbolic system that bound whole communities together. The reliefs reveal that art in the Stone Age was not confined to caves or small figurines. It could be monumental, public, and shared. To stand among these pillars, surrounded by carved animals, must have felt like stepping into a world where humans and creatures were deeply intertwined. These carvings remain among the oldest surviving monumental artworks on Earth, a testimony to belief and imagination. People gathered for great feasts at sacred sites. Archaeological evidence suggests that Stone Age people did not only build sacred places, they traveled to them for feasts. The bones of wild animals, large cooking pits, and discarded tools have been found around ritual sites like Göbekli Tepe, pointing to massive gatherings. People may have journeyed for miles, carrying food, drink, and offerings, coming together to share in ritual and celebration. These feasts were more than meals. They were moments of bonding, exchange, and identity. Imagine the glow of the fire pits, groups roasting meat, sharing stories, and perhaps singing as the carved animals loomed in the background. Such gatherings helped bind scattered groups into larger networks, forging alliances that might last across the seasons. These early feasts show that celebration is not a modern invention. Even in the Stone Age, people found joy in gathering, in eating, and in marking special moments together, building community with fire, food, and song. Early farmers built tombs from massive stones. As farming spread, communities began building great tombs from massive stones, known as megaliths. These structures, some more than 6,000 years old, were feats of engineering, requiring the movement of multi-ton slabs without the wheel or any metal tool. Megalithic tombs served as burial chambers for whole communities, marking places of memory and identity. They were often covered with earth to form mounds, blending architecture into the landscape. The effort to build such a tomb reflects a strong sense of ancestry and continuity, a desire to honor the dead and anchor the living to the land. Some tombs remained in use for centuries, receiving generation after generation of burials. To stand before these monuments is to feel the weight of collective effort and devotion. They remind us that even in the Stone Age, people built not only for survival, but for remembrance, raising structures meant to outlast their own lifetimes. Passage graves were aligned to the sun. Many megalithic tombs were built with astonishing precision. Their passages aligned to the rising or setting sun at the solstices or equinoxes. At Newgrange in Ireland, for example, light pierces the narrow passage on the winter solstice, flooding the inner chamber with a golden glow. This alignment shows deep astronomical knowledge and clear symbolic intent, linking death with the cycles of the sun. Such precision required years of patient observation and careful planning. These alignments may have symbolized rebirth, renewal, or the bond between ancestors and the cosmic order. To stand inside such a tomb as the sun rises and illuminates the carved stone is to witness a fusion of architecture, ritual, and astronomy. These monuments prove that Stone Age people were not only builders but astronomers, weaving the heavens into their very graves. The passage of light through stone remains one of the most awe-inspiring legacies of prehistoric imagination. Stone circles were raised to mark the solstices. Beyond tombs, people also raised great circles of standing stones, some aligned with the solstices or other events in the sky. Stonehenge in England is the most famous, but stone circles are found across Europe and beyond. These rings may have served as ritual spaces, calendars, or gathering places, where communities came together to mark the rhythms of the year. To align massive stones with an astronomical event required knowledge, patience, and collective effort. The stones themselves became markers of time, guiding planting, harvest, or ritual. To gather within a circle of towering stones as the sun rose or set at a precise point must have been profoundly moving. These monuments reveal how deeply the cycles of the heavens were woven into human life. Long before written calendars, stone circles anchored time itself in the earth, creating sacred landscapes where sky and stone met. Menhirs were raised as solitary standing monuments. Scattered across Europe, Africa, and Asia are menhirs, single standing stones raised by Stone Age people. Some stand alone, others in rows or clusters, towering above the landscape. The effort to quarry, move, and raise these stones was immense, yet their purpose remains a mystery. They may have marked territory, commemorated ancestors, or served as ritual markers aligned with the sun or stars. Some are carved with symbols, while others stand plain and silent, their meaning long lost to time. What is clear is their power. To walk among them is to feel the presence of intention, of human will etched into stone. Menhirs represent some of the earliest large-scale monuments, turning the landscape itself into a canvas of memory and meaning. Their enduring presence shows that Stone Age people sought permanence, raising markers that still stand thousands of years later, long after their builders have vanished from the earth. Children learned their craft by watching toolmakers. In the Stone Age, there were no schools and no textbooks. Children learned by watching, listening, and imitating. Archaeological sites reveal piles of poorly made stone flakes lying beside expert tools, suggesting that children practiced napping under the guidance of their elders. These mistakes are priceless clues, showing how skills were passed down. Children may have gathered around while parents shaped blades, learning the angles, the strikes, the very feel of stone splitting in the hand. They learned to sew by watching hides stitched, to hunt by trailing older hunters, to gather by exploring with their families. Learning was immersive, woven directly into daily life. This process ensured that knowledge did not die with a single generation, but flowed continuously across time. Every child's clumsy first flake was part of a tradition stretching back through the millennia, a quiet apprenticeship that shaped survival and innovation in the ancient world. Skills were passed down, unbroken, over thousands of years. The Stone Age was an era of continuity, where skills were preserved not by writing but by practice and teaching. Toolmaking traditions lasted tens of thousands of years, passed from hand to hand across the generations. A particular style of blade or spear point could come to define a whole culture, spreading as people taught and learned. The persistence of these traditions shows the strength of oral knowledge, of memory and demonstration. In every hearth circle, children absorbed skill from parents and grandparents, ensuring survival. Some techniques required remarkable precision and planning, yet they were preserved across centuries. This continuity speaks to human patience and shared effort. In a world without books, people themselves were the libraries, carrying knowledge in their hands and their minds. Skill lived on in muscle and memory, preserved in each strike of stone and each careful stitch of hide, handed gently from one lifetime to the next. Stone tool styles can identify entire cultures. Archaeologists can often recognize a whole culture by the style of its stone tools. Distinct shapes, techniques, and preferences mark groups across both time and space. A hand axe from Africa, a microlith from Europe, or an obsidian blade from the Near East each speaks of the people who made it. These styles were not random, but taught, repeated, and perfected, becoming a kind of cultural signature. The appearance of a particular tool style in a new region often reveals migration, trade, or contact between groups. Some points are so distinctive that they can be traced spreading across an entire continent in just a few centuries. Tools were as much about identity as utility, reflecting choices passed down across generations. To hold a stone blade is to glimpse not only an individual craftsman, but an entire culture's tradition, carried in shape, skill, and memory through the ages. In stone, whole peoples left their mark. Distinct traditions spread across continents. The Stone Age was not a single uniform period. Different regions developed their own tool traditions, art styles, and strategies of survival. These traditions spread across vast areas, carried by migration, trade, or simple imitation. A method of flint napping born in one valley could appear hundreds of miles away, evidence of ideas traveling with the people who held them. This shows that even without writing, humans shared knowledge widely. Some traditions endured for millennia, almost unchanged, while others evolved swiftly as groups adapted to new environments. The spread of these traditions also reveals networks of contact, the paths along which stories, tools, and innovations flowed. Far from isolated, Stone Age cultures were connected, exchanging ideas across mountains, rivers, and deserts. Distinct traditions remind us that diversity and exchange have always been part of humanity's story, shaping not only survival, but the rich variety of expression that defines us as a species. People wove fibers thousands of years before farming. Textiles may seem a late invention, but people were twisting and weaving fibers long before the first fields of crops appeared. Archaeologists have discovered imprints of woven cloth on fragments of clay, dating back more than 20,000 years, long before agriculture. Plant fibers, animal hair, and sinew were twisted into thread, then braided or woven into mats, bags, nets, and cord. This technology transformed daily life. Nets allowed new ways of fishing and hunting. Woven bags could carry gathered plants and tools. Mats gave insulation within shelters. Later, clothing spun from fiber added comfort and protection. Weaving required patience and dexterity, often passed down through generations as a skill as vital as tool-making or the keeping of fire. Long before cities or farms, people were already mastering the craft of binding fibers together, a quiet innovation that wove itself into the very fabric of human survival. Nets and baskets were woven in the Mesolithic. During the Mesolithic, the middle phase of the Stone Age, people developed new ways to weave plant fibers into nets and baskets. Impressions left in clay reveal the patterns of woven fiber, dating back thousands of years. Nets allowed for efficient fishing and the trapping of small game, while baskets transformed gathering, making it possible to carry far larger amounts of food and material. These woven objects rarely survive, yet the traces they left behind show the importance of fiber technology. The making of nets and baskets reflects patience and skill, as well as a deep knowledge of local plants. It also marks a shift toward new strategies of survival, with more reliance on stored food and organized, shared activity. Nets and baskets may seem humble beside stone tools or cave art, yet they reveal an ingenuity just as profound, quiet revolutions that shaped the daily lives of Stone Age communities. Ancient mortars and pestles came before the first crops. Grinding tools are often linked with farming, yet mortars and pestles appear long before the first crops were ever sown. Stone mortars with smoothed, rounded interiors have been found dating back more than 30,000 years, used to crush wild seeds, nuts, and roots. Pestles shaped from hard stone show clear wear marks from repeated pounding and grinding. These tools transformed tough plant foods into digestible meals, unlocking calories that raw plants could never provide. They also show foresight. Grinding was time-consuming, yet people chose to invest the effort in preparing food for storage or for shared meals. Some of the oldest grinding stones are so carefully made that they lasted for generations. Their presence in camps and caves reveals that plant food played a far greater role in the Stone Age diet than was once believed. The mortar and pestle stand as quiet but powerful inventions, laying the groundwork for farming long before any field appeared. Wild cereals were gathered for thousands of years. Before farming, wild cereals such as einkorn, barley, and millet were staples for foragers across the ancient Near East and beyond. Grinding stones more than 20,000 years old bear traces of these plants, proof that people harvested them long before cultivation. Gathering wild cereals was hard work, bending, cutting, threshing, and grinding with simple tools. But the reward was rich. Grain could be stored, cooked, and carried, offering energy long after a hunt had ended. Some of the earliest breads may have been baked from such grain, cooked as flat cakes on hot stones. This long tradition shows that agriculture did not appear suddenly, but grew out of deep experience. People knew the cycles of plants, the best places to find them, and the patience needed to process them. The fields of the first farmers were born from thousands of years of gathering wild grasses beneath the open sky. People experimented with plants before farming. Long before organized agriculture, Stone Age people were already experimenting with plants. Archaeological evidence shows that wild cereals and legumes were selectively gathered, replanted, and even encouraged to grow in favorable patches. Some groups learned that seeds dropped near camp would sprout again, inspiring the very idea of cultivation. These experiments blurred the line between foraging and farming, setting the stage for agriculture. They reveal curiosity and close observation, noticing which plants grew best, which seasons brought abundance, and how soil and water shaped success. Over generations, these small acts of tending became deliberate efforts, leading to the domestication of wheat, barley, and lentils. This experimentation was never sudden, but gradual, 1,000 small discoveries woven into daily life. Farming did not begin with a single field, it began with countless moments of attention, as people realized they could shape nature just as surely as they shaped stone. Goats and sheep were among the first herded animals. When farming took root, animals became as important as plants. Goats and sheep were among the first species domesticated, their herding beginning more than 10,000 years ago. Both were perfectly suited to human needs, hardy, adaptable, and providers of milk, meat, hide, and wool. Archaeological sites show pens and corrals where wild herds were gradually brought under control. Over generations, people selected the animals that were calmer and easier to manage, slowly shaping them into domesticated breeds. Herding transformed human life, offering reliable food and material, and tying communities more firmly to the land. To keep goats and sheep was to claim security, a steady source of sustenance that freed people from the pure uncertainty of the hunt. These early herds were living tools, carried from valley to valley, following people wherever they went. They were among the first true companions in humanity's long partnership with the animal world. Cattle were domesticated in the Neolithic. The domestication of cattle marked another milestone of the Neolithic, descended from the massive wild aurochs. Early cattle were powerful animals, valued for their meat, milk, and hide, and eventually for their strength as beasts of burden. Domestication began more than 8,000 years ago in the Near East, where people learned to manage herds, breed selectively, and protect them from predators. The shift to cattle herding was transformative. Herds became a kind of mobile wealth, a source of food that could walk alongside a community as it migrated or settled. Cattle also carried symbolic weight, appearing in ritual and burial, their strength and size inspiring reverence. To tame such a large animal was a remarkable achievement, a blend of patience, risk, and ingenuity. These herds expanded the very possibilities of survival, fueling the growth of population and settlement. The story of cattle is the story of humanity's deepening bond with the natural world. Permanent villages emerged with farming. As farming spread, people no longer needed to follow the herds or the seasonal migrations. For the first time in history, permanent villages appeared. These settlements, some more than 10,000 years old, were clusters of houses built from stone, mud, or timber. Archaeologists have uncovered villages with courtyards, storage pits, and communal spaces, revealing whole new rhythms of life. Farming allowed larger populations to gather, and permanence encouraged new crafts, pottery, weaving, and the specialization of tools. Villages also became centers of culture, where traditions deepened and identities grew stronger. But with permanence came new challenges, disputes over land, the spread of disease, and the constant need for cooperation. Yet the advantages outweighed the risks, and the village became humanity's new home. These settlements were the seeds of towns, cities, and civilizations, rooted in the soil tilled by Stone Age farmers. The first villages were small, but their legacy shaped the entire future of humankind. Mud brick houses appeared in the Stone Age. Among the earliest permanent dwellings were mud brick houses, built by mixing clay, straw, and water into bricks that dried hard in the sun. These structures, some more than 9,000 years old, have been found in ancient villages across the Near East. Mud brick houses were durable yet simple to build, their walls insulating against both heat and cold. Floors were sometimes plastered, and hearths set inside for cooking. Roofs of timber and reed offered extra space for storage, or even for sleeping. These houses marked a profound shift, not the temporary shelters of hide or bone, but stable homes meant to last for years, even decades. To build with mud brick was to declare permanence, to root oneself in a place and invest in its future. Standing among the ruins of these ancient houses, one can still trace the outlines of humanity's first true neighborhoods, built of earth and ambition. The first plastered floors were laid at Jericho. In the ancient settlement of Jericho, Archaeologists uncovered houses with floors coated in thick plaster, some of the earliest known anywhere in the world. These smooth, gleaming surfaces were made from lime plaster, created by heating limestone to incredible temperatures and mixing it with water. The effort required was immense, involving fire, labor, and careful planning. Yet the result was striking: clean and durable floors that could be repaired and resurfaced as needed. These floors were not only functional but symbolic, representing care and investment in the home. Some even showed traces of pigment, suggesting they were decorated or colored. The plastered floors of Jericho reveal how far Stone Age people had come. From living in caves or huts to crafting engineered spaces, they transformed a house into a true living space, durable and orderly, proof of communities growing more sophisticated and more rooted with every passing generation. Some villages had defensive walls long before cities. Jericho holds another surprise: massive stone walls built around the village more than 9,000 years ago. These are among the earliest defensive structures in all of human history, raised long before the rise of true cities. The walls, several meters high, were built of stone and mud brick, perhaps to protect against floods or raiding groups. A stone tower attached to the wall hints at surveillance or ceremony. These defenses show that Stone Age communities were already thinking collectively, planning large-scale works that demanded cooperation and leadership. They also reveal that danger was present, whether from rival groups, wild animals, or the forces of nature. To build such walls marks a turning point, where communities began to protect not only their people, but their fields, herds, and stores of food. These early fortifications foreshadowed the great walled cities of later ages, yet their roots lie in Stone Age ingenuity and caution. The earliest pottery came before metalwork. Pottery is one of humanity's most enduring technologies, and its origins reach back into the Stone Age, long before the use of any metal. The earliest pots date to more than 16,000 years ago in East Asia, where people shaped vessels of clay and hardened them in fire. These simple but revolutionary containers transformed daily life. They allowed water to be stored, food to be cooked more efficiently, and grain to be preserved. Unlike baskets or skins, pottery was durable, able to last for years if handled with care. Decorating pots with patterns soon followed, turning usefulness into art. Pottery also carried social meaning, its designs reflecting identity or tradition. Its invention marks a profound step, enabling the storage and cooking that supported larger communities. Long before bronze or iron, it was humble clay that reshaped human life. Plain earth transformed into vessels of both survival and culture. People decorated their pottery with pattern and paint. Even the earliest pottery was rarely left plain. People scratched lines, pressed chord patterns, or painted designs into their vessels. These decorations transformed a simple pot into an object of identity and pride. A pattern might signify ownership, community, or symbolic meaning, while painted motifs often reflected nature, animals, plants, or abstract designs. Some pots bear repeating geometric shapes, perhaps linked to ritual or a sense of the cosmos. Decorating pottery was more than an aesthetic act. It turned vessels into carriers of culture. Each design reflected the hand of its maker and the traditions of a group, allowing archaeologists today to trace styles across regions and centuries. Pottery was both practical and expressive, a way to hold food and ideas at the very same time. The act of decorating shows that beauty mattered as much as survival, proving that even the simplest vessel could hold both nourishment and meaning. Stone Age innovations laid the foundations of civilization. The Stone Age was not a time of stagnation, but of constant innovation. Fire, clothing, shelter, tools, art, and agriculture all emerged across these long millennia. Each invention laid the groundwork for the civilizations that would follow. The ability to store food, to track time, to build monuments, and to gather in communities were all first steps toward towns, writing, and states. The Stone Age was humanity's great laboratory, where trial and error shaped the foundations of everything to come. Without its ingenuity, there would be no cities, no temples, no history as we know it. These innovations remind us that progress is cumulative. Each spark, each flake of stone, each seed planted, pushed humanity gently forward. Far from primitive, the Stone Age was the age when everything began, when people carved the first steps on a path that still stretches on into our future. And so our journey through the Stone Age comes to a quiet close. We have walked beside the first toolmakers, who struck sparks from stone and lit their fires in the dark. We have stood in caves painted with the shapes of mammoths and lions, echoes of a world both beautiful and perilous. We have listened for the sound of flutes carved from bone, their notes drifting through painted caverns. We have watched villages rise, harvests take root, and monuments of stone lifted slowly toward the sky. The Stone Age was never only about survival, it was about imagination. The first beads strung upon a cord, the first songs, the first seeds pressed into the earth. Each was a beginning, each was a spark that carried humanity forward. The people of that age may seem distant, but their hands shaped the very world we still live in. The tools they invented, the stories they told, and the paths they carved became the foundations of everything that followed. As we leave this ancient world behind, let us remember the patience of those who ground seeds upon stone, the courage of those who crossed the sea in fragile boats, and the wonder of those who looked up at the stars and imagined patterns in that endless sweep. Their lives remind us that humanity's strength lies not only in survival, but in curiosity, creativity, and connection. If you enjoyed this slow journey, you can support the channel by liking, subscribing, or leaving a comment. It helps these gentle journeys find the people who need them, one sleepy soul at a time. And if you are still awake, there will be another journey waiting for you on the screen. But for now, there is nothing more to do, and nowhere else you need to be. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop. Let the weight of the day slip away as softly as footprints fading into ancient soil. Breathe in and slowly out. Let your mind wander through painted caves and starlit fields, and allow yourself to drift, carried by the quiet echoes of the Stone Age. Sleep well and good night.